Here we are.
Hi.
Shasha. Charlotte Page on the podcast. Number one fan now becomes on the podcast.
Dive's number one fan.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm so good. Oh, it's
good.
so good to have you on, and especially someone that's just not only graduated, but you've been on in a full major musical. We've just been doing Sunset Boulevard together. Both swings. You were on stage swing. What's that been like?
It has been amazing. It has been such a great introduction to the industry. When I got that phone call and my agent said, you've booked Sunset Boulevard, and then she followed it up with, and you've booked a swing.
Oh my gosh.
The feelings were terrifying, to be honest. I was terrified. I thought, I don't think you ever think that you can do it. And then you're put in this situation where you book that gig and you're like, oh my gosh, how do they know that I can do this?
Where were you when you got the call?
I was at home and I'd just been for coffee with a couple of members of my cohort, and they'd said, have you found out about Sunset yet? And I was sort of just like, oh no, not sure what's going on. I got home, I sat down at my desk, I was working, and I got a call. And I didn't have anyone at home. So I was like, what do I do? And
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was so many emotions. But it was the best call I've ever received.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, it's amazing. And we just did it in Melbourne and Sydney. Working at the Opera House, how awesome was that?
It was,
I know, walking every day, just
I
like seeing it. It doesn't feel real sometimes, did it?
Billy Boucher would always say, you've peaked too early, like your first gig working at the Opera House. I was like, I know, it set a really high bar, but yeah.
Oh my
It was
gosh.
just, really surreal, especially, I don't know about you, but when we walked in that first day, it was really emotional. There were a lot of tears.
Yeah, I'd never actually even been in the Opera House, let alone perform there. Not even as a tourist. I just walked around it and thought, that's nice.
Yeah, that's nice.
Oh my gosh. So then let's track back a little bit, because you trained at the Con and you're very passionate about your time there. How long were you there?
I was there for 3 years.
Yeah.
But they've actually had a name change now. So they are the Queensland Academy of Excellence in Musical Theatre, QAEMT.
Gosh. Say that.
So I know. Clamped.
Quamped.
But I am a Con kid because it was the Con up until I left.
Yeah, right.
I loved
So what
it.
year did you start there?
I started in 2021 and then graduated last year in 2023.
Wow. Was that after COVID?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I was living in Tassie at the time.
Yep.
So I was really fortunate to not be in the thick of
And
COVID.
you grew up in Tassie, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a Launceston girl, proud Tassie girl.
Gosh.
Yeah.
So what was the dance school, the school that you went to there?
I started at Launceston Dance Centre
Yes.
with Miss Marianne.
Oh, very
And
good. How old were you when you were starting?
I think I was 3.
Wow.
Yeah, I started ballet. And
That's
then,
wild.
Yeah. Mum always said, she was like, when I was in high school, I struggled to stand up in front of, she was a prefect, and she was like, I always struggled to stand up and speak. And so a big thing when she said, when I had you girls, I've got a big sister, she was like, I didn't want you to have those same confidence issues. So she, enrolled us in ballet, and then, next thing
3
I know,
years
it was-
old.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I started my dance training at 14. Like, it's just crazy.
I know. No, it's all it's been most of my life being on stage. So,
Oh my gosh. And so obviously you did the thing in Tassie. What was the kind of moment where you started to feel like, maybe I need to like outsource and go to that next step?
I had a really interesting path after school. So I'd always danced. When I was 11, I got into Latin and ballroom dancing, which I feel like is a big part of my journey.
Yeah.
So worth noting, that was something that I did for about 8 years and competed, and I loved that. And I think that was my first introduction to acting in a way, because there's a lot of storytelling in Latin and ballroom dancing.
I loved hearing this about you. I didn't even find this out until later in this, like 7 months of meeting each other.
I know. I think we only talked about it in the last week.
Wait, so you competed?
Yes.
Yes. Oh my gosh. That must be a whole different world.
It's a very different world. Yeah. So I started ballroom when I was 11.
Yeah.
And the guy, Andrew Palmer, who came to Tassie and opened up the studio, I had a friend who'd started, and she was like, you should come along and have a go, because I'd always been dancing. And that was where I found, I guess, my thing. Like, that was when within a year, I was like, I'm much better at this than I am at ballet. And I never had ballet feet. Yeah, I started competing when I was about 11 or 12. And then, it's a very different world to musical theatre. The slick back hair and the fake tan and the glitzy costumes. But I loved it. I loved it. And that was where I really felt like I found my niche and my passion. And it took us overseas a couple of times. We went to Russia and we went to Latvia.
Did you?
Which was awesome when I was 15 and then 17. And then had a bit of a break when I finished high school.
Yeah.
My dance partner, Henry, went off travelling, and then he came back and we went for coffee, and he was like, I want to do the Aussies. So we did 6 months of hardcore training and went back and did our last competition together when I was 19. Yeah.
And so what was the shift between that and
Mm-hmm.
then going into musical theatre?
Actually, the first amateur theatre show I did in Tassie was Strictly Ballroom. So that was funny because
Go
that was like
figure.
worlds collide.
Yes.
And I think theatre for me started in high school
Mm-hmm.
when I was competing in Latin, and then I started singing at school when I was cast in like our school musical.
Yeah.
It's a weird combination because I think it took me a while to grow, or it took me a long time to actually grow my confidence in my other abilities in singing. I'd only ever known dancing. Yeah, Strictly Ballroom was a funny one because I was like, this is both of the things that I've done for a long time.
That was
Meeting
obviously
each
the
other.
perfect thing.
Yeah.
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 It's crazy how things happen
I know.
when they do, right?
I know. Yeah.
Oh my
So that was
gosh.
good.
So good. So then you did 3 years at the, what it's called now?
QAEMT, but it was the con when I was there.
The con when you were there.
Yeah.
And so when were auditions for Sunset? Was that the first audition you'd ever done? Was there other experiences?
Once we get to third year at the con,
Yeah.
we're allowed to audition for.
Right. So for the
big
first 2 years,
musicals.
you're not allowed to
No,
audition?
Paul, who runs the course there, and it's really true. You've come here to learn and you're still cooking, as you would
Yes.
say,
Yeah.
in first and second year. But in third year, opens up that opportunity for you to start becoming
Right.
an auditioner
Yeah.
and
Seeing for
experience what
things and
that's
getting in
like.
the room. Yeah.
Getting in the room. So my first audition was Grease, and my second
Cool.
audition was, what else did I go to? I think I auditioned for something else in person. I actually can't remember what it was, but I think I had 2 auditions. Oh, Chicago. And that was on my
Chicago.
birthday.
Oh, really?
Yes. And so it was
Wow.
such a full circle moment because I auditioned for Chicago on my 26th birthday, got cut, and on my 27th birthday, I celebrated it in Sunset.
Wow.
And I was
There
like,
you
this is
go.
so weird how much can happen in a year.
Oh my God.
But yeah, not much could shake me that day. I was like, it's my birthday. I'm going to go have a nice day
Yeah,
with my
that's
sister.
it.
So I did Grease, Chicago, and then it was that period of time when I graduated where there were heaps of auditions. I think Groundhog Day was auditioning, Sunset was auditioning.
Yeah. I feel like
There was about 5 auditions.
it all rains in a
Spirit of
pause.
Christmas, which
when
is
it rains,
one
it
that-
pours, I feel,
Yeah.
with auditions.
Yeah.
It's either nothing and
Yeah.
then 1 month where there's like 5.
Literally, it was crazy. But at the time, we were all like, what a privilege. We've just graduated and now we're getting seen for all of these
Yeah.
musicals. And I think most
That
of
must
them
have felt good.
were. It was really good. It was good. And I think the fact that there were a few auditions as well took the pressure off because it felt like, okay, there's all these different shows coming. I might not be right for any of them. I might be right for one of them. I don't really know. But it meant that I didn't put all my eggs in one basket and
Yeah.
go, this is the only show auditioning right now. Like just the pressure's increased a little
Yeah.
bit sometimes.
So you did 3 of the auditions at that time.
Yep.
And what was the first audition experience like that you'd ever done? Was that Grease?
Grease.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was that like? Because sharing the truth here.
I was
Because you trained for
terrified.
so long to then finally go and do the thing and you're there.
Yeah.
What is it like?
It was actually so funny because Grease came up and I think I looked at that. I was obviously aware I was still studying as well. So I didn't
Yes.
have that bachelor's degree yet.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to put too much pressure on it. But you are so nervous that first audition. And I think the nerves for me were increased because I was studying.
Yeah.
It was like, this is what it is. And as they say, you're a professional auditioner. You're not a professional performer. That's what
Yeah.
we do. You got to get the job.
Yes.
So then I didn't really have the ability to walk in. Even after 2 years of training, I still walked in terrified. I was so nervous, and I think I'd learnt 3 different characters material. Maybe I think it was like Marty. I might have learnt Sandy.
Yeah, right.
We'd done Grease at uni, so I
there
was
you
familiar
go.
with it, which was good.
Do you find that helped a little bit?
It
'Cause you
did a
kinda
little
knew-
bit.
At least you knew the material
Yeah.
of what the angle kind of was going
Yeah,
for.
I knew the material, but I walked in, and as much as I tried to pretend like I was so confident, I just was so scared. I was so scared, and I didn't audition well because I actually didn't back myself that day. I really walked out, and I think I felt the pressure too. I was living in Brisbane. I'd flown to Melbourne for the audition.
Wow.
So
Okay.
it was that introduction to, okay, this is also like the expensive part of auditioning. If I'm going to be Brisbane based and I'm going to be doing this all the time, to walk in, sing a song and be like, thanks, that's all we need to see. I was like, oh, this is the industry. Like,
I
welcome to
know,
the industry.
welcome.
So it was actually a really good introduction.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it made me go, all right.
This
I
is
don't want
where I'm
to.
at.
I don't want to feel this terrified when I walk in. That was a
Okay.
big thing that I took
Yeah.
away from it. But B, I was like, this is what it is, and I was a bit of like, there was acceptance in that
Yeah.
moment of that rejection, being like, all right,
Yeah,
on to the
right.
next.
I know.
Yeah.
So then you ended up, was it Chicago the second one?
Chicago was the second one.
Yeah. And how did you feel going into that? Obviously, you're probably
So different.
so different.
Yeah.
What do you feel like changed since the Grease audition?
I think I walked out and went, I don't want to walk in feeling the way I walked into Grease. I already walked in feeling really just high anxiety and I don't think I set myself up well for that audition.
Right.
I think on the day I sat around and I practiced the songs a million times even though I'd already done that. I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I
You'd psych yourself out.
absolutely psyched myself out. The difference between Greece and Chicago, though, was that dance was first in Chicago. And I think naturally I feel more comfortable and in my
Right.
element walking into a dance audition first.
Yes.
So, yeah, the difference was that just in itself. I thought, okay, I'm doing the thing that I feel the most confident in
Yes.
first. So that was good. And it was also my birthday. Like, I know that
Right.
sounds, but
So,
I
you're
think-
like,
but
even if I get
was
cut,
like,
it's
I
my
need to believe
birthday.
it's my birthday every
Yeah.
audition I walk into because I walked in thinking, okay, I need something else that's going to, even if I get rejected today,
That's it.
what they say, rejection is redirection. So,
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
my mindset was I was just in a healthier, happier place, I
Yeah.
think, when I walked in for Chicago. Yeah.
When you were talking about how you didn't back yourself in the first time and then you were able to the second time, was there anything else specific that you did that allowed you, it can be something simple, that allowed you
Yeah.
to feel like you were backing yourself going in?
Yeah. I listened to the 5-minute, it is by, I've got to remember what it's called. The Arts Wellbeing Collective do a pre-perform, it's called a performance energy, like meditation.
Okay.
And we were introduced to this at uni. I can't remember if it was just like on a worksheet we got given after a workshop or something, but it was like, this is a really good resource. You should listen to this.
Fantastic.
They have a 5 minutes called Extend Breath. It's just like a deep breathing meditation. And then this is called Performance Energy. And I'd started listening to it when we were doing shows when I was in first year and we were doing Grease. And then it became something that I would listen to. And before Grease audition, I did not listen to it. And I don't know how, I think it's easy to see that this could have actually had a big impact. But if you haven't listened to it,
Yeah. I'll link it into this
It's
episode for sure.
amazing.
And it's very fitting because I'm
yeah,
creating things right now.
I know. And that's, we've obviously been able to talk about this stuff so much throughout Sunset, but I've never been a big person in meditation, but I find it incredibly relaxing. It actually makes me cry.
Yes.
It makes me cry because I think the way it's structured, it always reminds me that I do this because I love it. And I think that is really powerful before walking into an audition.
Yes.
Having that mindset, even if I get a no today, I do this because I love it. And it's just a really nice reminder. And I listened to it before my Sunset audition.
There you go.
So who knows? But
There we go. Well,
Yeah.
I'll definitely check it out. I didn't even know they had that. So
Yeah.
that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's really good.
I really love all the work that they do as well. And
Yeah.
and that's it. I think a lot of us, gosh, giving me a mindset hack at 18, I would have told you to piss off.
I used to be
I
like this
would've-
too. I was like, meditation.
Yeah, well, I don't have time for
Deep
that.
breathing? What?
Deep breathing. I can breathe.
As someone who's like such a high, like I've been such
Yeah.
an anxious kid. I was like,
Literally.
imagine.
I know. Oh my gosh. I was just, Anyway, but now now I teach yoga and I've done all of that
Yeah.
and really understood the benefits of it it's fundamentally how I live now with learning about it and teaching people. So if people are hearing about, meditate or stuff, things like the
Arts Wellbeing Collective.
Arts Wellbeing
Yeah.
Collective and even the stuff that I've started to post, I've always found, even when I was just a slight tangent that we're going now, I remember trying Pilates, like reformer Pilates for the first time, but I never did it beforehand. And then my introduction to it was from a dancer or an artist that was actually teaching it. And sometimes that's a really cool way to start going into things that maybe you're not comfortable with, like meditation or yoga, actually being taught by a performer, because then we're able to actually make it morph to your exact needs.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that meditation it was based on that you're about to go into an audition and to give your values and to all of that as well.
Yeah, it's just really relatable and just incredibly calming. And I think that is so important to walk in clear-minded because you don't know what's going to be thrown at you, but
No.
walking in and worrying about that
Yeah.
beforehand isn't going to serve you.
And
So-
when we're going into auditions, we're in our heads
Oh, yeah.
massively. When we
Yeah.
don't even sometimes believe we're in a body. We're just like,
Yeah.
but what if this, what if that? So just
and
taking
you walk
a
out
moment. Yeah.
and you go, what just happened?
What just happened? Yeah. So then you did the Chicago, you felt a little bit more self-worth and a bit more stable from doing this meditation, which was amazing. And then Sunset. happen. So was there any differences? What did you learn from the Chicago audition that allowed you to step into Sunset in a different way?
I think just a little bit of like rejection actually really helped me with resilience. So getting the no's was good because it made me go, I'm determined to get a yes. Yeah. Not necessarily in a way that I would walk in and act any different than I usually would, but I definitely think for me there was just a bigger confidence in myself. And there was also another element that might have helped in the way that when I went into my audition, so I was actually auditioning for Sunset in Melbourne. That was my original Sunset. I think it must have been Melbourne was auditioning after Sydney, and I couldn't make my time due to a family. I think I might have had a funeral, something, but I couldn't make it. And I contacted my agent, sorry, not my agent because I wasn't with them yet, but I contacted uni, our admin lady Domi there who was organising all of that for us then. Just absolutely just ask if you can change it. So I ended up going in Sydney, which also meant that I walked into the audition. I was very like by myself. I wasn't there with any of my cohort members. I wasn't there with I didn't know anyone. And so I really felt like I could just unapologetically walk. Do you know what I mean? Like I didn't have anything holding me back, or I wasn't worried about making sure that I wasn't worried about what everyone else was doing. I felt like I turned up. I was like, hey, like Katie who booked it as well. We met each other in the bathrooms.
Wow.
We ended up going for like a beer at the pub after. I called back and became really good friends.
I love this story.
Yeah, and we were like, she goes, imagine if we booked this. And she quickly went, oh no, I don't want to think about that. No, we can't think about that. And then we did. So that was really funny. But I like walked in fresh. I was like, I'm going to just be myself, say hi to everyone. And it was such a lovely room. It was really friendly. Everyone knew each other, but instead of sitting back and being like, everyone knows each other, I was like, I'm going to talk to people and meet people and start to, which then I felt like I walked in feeling more confident because I just had conversations with people in the room. And people are nice. Don't think that you're going to walk into an audition and everyone's sitting there like this, and which I think is a bit of a stigma. Like everyone's so focused and like talk to anyone. And it's just not like that.
At all.
That's what's been so nice about working and doing Sunset. It's everyone is so nice. Everyone has your back. It's not as scary as I think it can sometimes be played out.
And we talk about this a lot, especially with a lot of performers. You get taught so strictly about what the industry is, and then you have the experience, which I feel is consistently changing. When I was starting out, it was a whole different world to where it is now. What was it like then stepping from now you did the training, you've done the auditions, you got in, and now you're starting? That's a long time to get there from your ballroom kind of days and being in Tassie, doing auditions, and now you're about to start rehearsals for Sunset. What was that like?
Yeah. Well, it was
did you have to move? Were you?
Yeah, so I'm Brisbane based. Yeah. So then, I moved there for the con, and Brizzy's been home since. So
you had to move down to Melbourne. To start rehearsals.
But I lived in Melbourne back in 2017 to 2019 because this is my second degree. So I did a Bachelor of Communications and worked in marketing, and then ended up back in Tassie, and then I've moved around a little bit. Yeah. So coming back to Melbourne definitely felt like a little piece of home, which was nice. But I had, from the time I found out, which must have been late November to when we started, which was the 1st or 2nd of April.
Yeah, it was quite a big gap.
Yeah, it was about 4 months before, like from finding out to when we started, which was really lovely because I felt like I had a lot of time to work out and set up how I thought I would swing. And you always think you're going to swing this is how you think you're going to do it. And then you get there and you're like, oh my gosh. Yeah. But I remember doing a lot of like mindset stuff and making sure I was like staying active and getting out and doing all the things that I like to do in that time, because I knew that once we started it was going to be pretty busy.
Yes.
But just preparing myself mentally really for what could come. I wasn't really sure what to expect.
And that's it, because you're wanting to prepare for something that you don't even know what's
I didn't know how to do it. No, and you guys have said it too. Like when we started, yourself and Amy Beresford at DC's, no one knows how to swing really. There was a little element of it studying at the con in our third year show we double cast, so you do have 2 tracks. That was the only time I'd been introduced into that. But for me, I was terrified of swinging harmonies.
Oh yes.
In true me fashion, I found I just never told you this. I found an old 19 something score of Sunset.
Of Sunset,
and
you
I
learned the
all of the
harmonies?
harmonies before I got
What,
booked.
were the same?
Yes.
Oh, good.
And I wasn't sure if they would be, but I know myself and I knew that swimming, if you think that you could never swing harmonies, trust me, you can, because I knew no music theory when I started at the con. I'd never done anything like this.
Same.
But I feel like I'm more like I learned by listening, like
Yes.
my ear. So I felt, okay, I've got the ear for, I think, singing the harmonies, but how am I actually going to hack this? And I thought, I'm just going to start now.
Yeah.
And I thought, even if they're the same or even if they're not, at least I've got a little bit of a head start. So that was actually what I did.
And I feel like I was speaking to a student the other day and they were saying, what do I expect going in? Like, how much do I need to know before starting and
you
starting
don't need
out?
to do that.
You literally
I
don't
actually need to make
know
that really clear.
Yeah, maybe don't go look at it.
I am very, that was definitely me being a little bit anxious about it
Yeah.
and wanting to get ahead. You do what suits you. For me, it worked out well, but it could have been a completely different score and I actually could have set myself up for failure. So
Literally.
actually probably wouldn't
Muscle
be
memory.
my first piece of advice, but definitely, finding what works for you. You don't know how to swim before you get there. You just have to learn it. But whatever they've seen in the audition room, I had to keep reminding myself it was enough for them to know that I could do it.
Yeah.
And that should have given me, though I doubted at times, enough confidence in myself to go, and then you just work it out as you go.
Yeah, so let's talk about swinging. Let's talk about that. And you've been, I think it was even near the end of Sydney, you had quite a good go at doing different roles and stuff like that.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, because you're on stage swing for
Yes.
Sunset, and for anyone that maybe doesn't know what that is, what is an on stage swing?
So essentially you have your own plot every night. So it's in the show. And then you, I guess in worst case scenario, you can be removed in a sense. So I think there was probably maybe
wasn't
one
that
or
many.
one or two shows they had to
Yeah.
cut my role
Which
out,
is-
which left Port Campbell on his own because
Yes.
he's the other on stage swing and we do most of
Lots of
our
things together.
scenes together. So a bit of interpretation there. And I had to do that once too. And
Yes,
I'd
which
said
is
to you
like,
and Bez, what do I do when I walk on? He's not going to be there. And Bez was like, just make it
all right.
up. Like,
Yeah.
you're creative.
Yeah, that's it.
Find
Make
a
it
new
work.
intention. I was like, okay, great. So yeah, and then I would swing into other tracks if they needed me, and then they might put in a few times, like they'd put an offstage swing into my track. Like Bez and Regan would do my track. I think I got about 7 swings in the last 2 weeks at Sunset, or 3 weeks at Sunset.
Gosh.
It was great.
Yeah,
It was
and you
great.
loved it, and you were
I
great.
love it.
You were great.
I love it. It's so fun.
Yeah,
I love the feeling. I love those nerves. I think you have to I love it.
I know,
I
right?
miss it because you don't really get, some people get nervous every show, but I tend to not.
Yeah, you
did
just
at
get
the start.
comfortable. You know what to expect,
Yeah.
so it becomes a little bit less chill.
What's gonna happen?
And then all of a
What?
sudden, oh, by the way, you're on for this character
Yeah.
tonight.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I'm a bit biased because I've been swinging for a little while.
Yeah.
And doing it, but yeah, you definitely get to a point where you just get, I don't know. I don't know if I could go back. I just get bored.
Yeah, I think you can't get complacent. It keeps you really in the show, and there's something that's really cool about going, I know all these tracks. Like I
Yeah.
could do all of these tracks. And
Yeah.
that's great for confidence because it's just, it reminds you that you're capable of more than you always think you are. So
A hidden thing that I really loved about swinging is that it really gives you the bigger picture idea of a scene, of the show in its entirety. Whereas when I've just been on for an ensemble track, you just live in your own little world. You don't even notice scenes or things that are happening. But being a swing is a really cool thing in the fact that you really need to understand the bigger picture. And I find the more that I go on for different people, I'm more aware of like the scene as a whole, and I get to actually enjoy it even more.
Yeah.
Don't you agree?
and things that you actually didn't notice.
Yes.
Small things,
Yeah.
but we were really lucky to have such a beautiful supportive cast, and I never felt like I couldn't say to Maddie or say to Mary, hey, in this moment here,
Yes.
what do you hand that bottle to that person? Or,
Yes.
And everyone was always so willing to be like, yep, you do this. But
Yeah.
sometimes you'd say, hey, do you just double checking, because you'd have something in your notes.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd be like, oh, that doesn't happen anymore, or oh, that's changed. And you go,
oh, right.
that in my heart.
I do that on stage. I love it.
Yeah.
I got to come on stage a fair few times with you as Campbell the other
Yeah.
night, and we had fun.
We did.
And something that I didn't realize until I actually went on with you, something that I do, I guess it's like a coping mechanism that I just find works for me when I go on. If I'm a bit nervous, like the key thing that I fundamentally do is bring fun to it.
Oh,
So before I go on, you always say,
We
right,
have fun.
Shah, I go like this. We're going to do this, and that's all going to be good. Let's go. Just bring the fun element. That's always helped me go
Yeah.
on because I always remind myself that it's really not that serious. what we're doing is really not that serious, and we're
Yeah.
actually meant to have fun. And if I'm having fun and I'm enjoying what I'm doing on stage, it allows me to do a much better job as
Yeah.
opposed to, but is it the right hand, left hand, and what about this?
It doesn't serve you.
No, it doesn't
Yeah.
serve. Yeah.
And it's the other thing to remind yourself when you walk off and you've made minor mistake, which you're going to do as a swing. I think that's a really important thing to note. You cannot ruminate on those mistakes. They're going to happen because you cannot possibly sometimes remember every single thing that you have to do.
Yeah.
But just to be able to walk away and go, the audience don't know.
No.
The majority of the people sitting in the audience have never seen this show. They don't know that you accidentally used your left hand instead of your right. I know that the dance captains and the rest do, but you can give those notes and you go, oh,
Yeah.
oops, sorry, forgot about that.
Yeah.
No, all good. Just wanted to just note it down and then you move on because, it just doesn't serve you to sit around. And I think two things I've learnt are trust and perspective. Trust yourself, trust the people that are around you, and the perspective thing, it's not that serious. I always say, and I said this to Regan once, I think Regan's offstage swing and we've worked very much together, which has been awesome. Very much lent on each other throughout this period, which has been great. And I said to her one day, it's a bit morbid, but I said, one day, like when I die, no one's going to stand up and say, Charlotte was a really great swing. Charlotte always knew which hand went up in the scene that we did. You know,
I love that.
And it helps me go,
Yes.
we are not we're not superhumans. We cannot get everything right. And it's our job to keep the show running.
Yes.
And of course, there's moments that are more crucial than others in terms of like safety. You don't want to run into someone or cause any traffic issues or forget important props, those things. But as long as you put your best foot forward, do your best, and remember that you cannot be perfect every time you walk out on that stage.
No.
Which is when the fun is the fun and you walk off as we have before and gone,
Oh,
I think
absolutely.
I did that bit wrong.
Yes. And it's a running thing that I find with every swing. I've been able to work with some really talented swings, including you. And it's a really funny thing that I still do to this day. You'll go on for the first show, you'll get so many things, and maybe there's like a few things that are like, that could be better. And then the next opportunity you get to go on, you'll do really well in the things that you stuffed up in. And then all of a sudden now one thing that you got really well done is all stuffed up. And it's just like this jumble. So if you're not humorous about it and you can't move forward with the sense of humility.
So long as no one's being hurt and everyone's
Yeah.
And of course, you're on top of your work
Yeah.
to a certain,
Absolutely.
extent. There's definitely, it's a balance, but I think we found a really nice balance in Sunset. And I think all credit to you and Bez as well, just creating such a lovely environment for us to feel like we could make mistakes and it wasn't the end of the world.
Yeah. That's it. Both Amy and I have worked with many different types of people and in those roles as well that have been quite strict and come down, and we've just found that we just come from a place of we've been there, we are swings, we've had that experience and we know how nerve-wracking it can be.
Yeah.
So I find that only kindness and support and actually seeing people as a human first is going to actually help them more than
And I'm
why are you not
so
doing this?
glad
It's
that you
like-
guys are like that.
Yeah. And
Because
we were talking about this yesterday about when I'm ever in a position that is of being a dance captain or providing notes in any capacity, I'm always coming from that place of they're actually professional artists that are being paid to be here. They're not my children that I need to keep a hold of. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I always think if someone gets something wrong, I inherently know or come from a frame of mind that no one actually ever wants to do it wrong. Everyone wants to do their best.
And they probably already know that they haven't.
Oh,
that they
all the time. The amount of times I don't have to give a note because someone will come up to me and be like, did you see that? I just have to say. And a lot of the times I might not be watching and I'll be like, oh, yeah, I don't know, Shah. We're going to have to come in at 10 a.m. to go over that. And I'll just say it. But sometimes just sitting back and letting people will come to you and be like,
walk
oh,
off
my
with
God.
that look like,
Yeah,
that. I did that before.
Yeah. But again,
absolutely.
it comes down to that, having fun with it, basically. So why don't we finish off with some things to think about if there's students that listen into the dive and they're looking to become a pro. They're wanting to use their skills, the things that they've trained for so long, to make a career out of it. And I would love to know any either advice that you would give maybe younger Charlotte, that coming from the world of studying to thinking, okay, I need to do all these things to move forward, to now having experience of doing auditions, getting into a show, living the lifestyle that you dreamed of. What would be some word of advice to people that are just in that cusp. They're auditioning now, maybe getting rejected. They're going through the motions.
I would say find other things that fill your cup. I have a lot of interests and hobbies. And when I started at the con, I remember walking away from my first couple of days feeling, am I an imposter? Because I was hearing people all the time like name drop and talk about so many different musicals that I'd never heard of. And I thought, do I know enough about this industry, or am I, yeah, I just felt like a little bit out of place. I knew how much I loved it, and I was obviously there. I'd proven myself. I got my foot in the door and I was at the con, so I didn't need to then prove that side of it.
Yeah.
But for me, I stay sane by having other things in my life that make me happy. I'm really close with my family. I've always loved sport.
Yeah.
And I found that during the times where, because your job is your hobby, is your passion, it's everything. We do this because we love it so much. But I feel like the times when I've been able to turn up to uni or turn up to work at Sunset or turn up to an audition as my best self is when I am filling my cup with the other things that make me happy. Yes, you have to keep learning and you have to keep going to the dance classes and having your singing lessons and upskilling and always being keen and eager to learn. But you don't have to be this person who lives and breathes musical theatre and it's absolutely everything about you.
It's actually not sustainable.
No, and I wished I knew that in my first sort of year of uni. I thought it had to be my everything, and then you decide of who you are and what makes you who you are. And it was a big thing for me, just like be myself, like be yourself. Don't turn up and pretend, because you have to, you're going to turn up and pretend to be someone else. Well, you got to sustain that for 7 months on a contract.
I know, right?
So I was like, I'm not going to be that. I just want to, I want more younger performers to know that you can have other things
right
that make you happy.
It's crazy.
You can be a yoga instructor. You can do the Melbourne half marathon. There's a lot of people who like run now. There's a lot of performers who I follow now. They wouldn't know who I am, but I see what they do and they have these other hobbies. And I love that. I actually find that really inspiring, because when these times have come, and it's only been 2 weeks since Sunset's finished, but we've essentially got about a 3-month break. I didn't want to get to that point, or the point when I'm out of work, which is going to come inevitably. There's going to be times when I'm in between contracts where I feel like I have nothing else.
Yeah.
So I try my best, and I would start it now if you're even an aspiring performer, because when you get to uni, it's basically a 9-to-5 unpaid job. It's a full-time job.
Literally. And I guess maybe that's what we get taught. So then that's what we expect. So then when you finish, or even you get into HO weeks, you've just gone from this 9 to whatever everyday class. So then when you're now left to your own devices, and even if you just did one class or a day or something, it doesn't feel enough.
Absolutely.
But just knowing that it is more than enough. It's just the years that you train, I always say, is like the intensive kind of like pressure cooker moment to get you ready, to get you cooked, to get you real. But then when you actually go into real life, you're 18 or whatever at that time, it's a good time to do all those things. But when we're talking about sustainability and the longevity, when we do HO weeks, we're not there 8, 12 hours a day.
No, on a Friday we rock up at 6:30 at our 1 hour call time.
And finish by like 10, 15 or something like that.
Yeah, and like for me, and I think you were similar, I like to get outdoors.
For a walk.
Go for a coffee with a mate. I also work in marketing and that other side as well. So what's maybe there that I could start to do, or look at other work for when we have these breaks.
I guess as well, when you are studying, because it is your whole life, when you now get all this opportunity to, in quotes, discover who you are or do that. I think a really cool stepping stone, and what I love teaching students, is to find what you actually love to do. Like for me, I really loved performing, but I also loved educating and teaching. So whenever I'm not performing, I'm always teaching a class, or now creating my own programs where I can teach. And so that fulfills me. But I always, again, like what you were just saying, really helpful thing to do is actually just live your life and be with family and do random things. When we were in Sydney, a bunch of us went and did like bowling.
Yeah.
And I have never had more fun. I think it was the best day out of the whole entire Sunset run. Like
silly fun.
Because it was stupid and silly and fun. And I think sometimes we forget to actually have fun as artists.
Yeah.
Because we are so disciplined to go and do the things and rock up and stuff, but we actually begin to lose sight of that we're human and that we love to just be stupid and have fun and actually enjoy this life that you're creating for yourself. It doesn't actually have to be that hard.
No, absolutely. And I also have been a big believer in when you do those things and you fill your cup outside of work, that's when you walk into the room and you bring the best energy. And that energy, that filters out everyone. And if you're going to walk in because you're constantly exhausted because you come to work, but that day you've done 2 dance classes and had a singing lesson and like you just – it's everything and you think that's what you have to do. You also need to rest. And I'm not great at that. I'm still like I struggle to sit down and watch a TV show. I always feel like I have to be doing something. So it's something that I need to work on still. But definitely, that energy does filter through. So the more you look after yourself, I think the better the vibe and energy and positivity and sense of that in the company's going to benefit. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
And
be your best for you, but be your best for everyone else around you too.
That's it. And we were chatting yesterday a little bit about this, and I've personally been on a bit of discovery and why I want to teach the things I want to teach and how I got to this stage where, yes, I'm a yogi and I love all of that and like meditation and sound bars. Like I'm there with the sage and loving my life, you know, outside of a show. And then I get into the show and it's game on, let's go, we're going to dance. But something that really crucially happened for me was about 5 years into my career, we'll chat about this, that I was in musicals, I was out, I was partying a lot. I was about 10 to 20% looking after myself properly, like the food I was eating, the people I was around, all of that. And then the rest was just like go, it was always the next thing. And I ended up getting, you don't see it on social media, but I hurt my back. I was out for 3 weeks, bedridden. There was so many different things upon my journey, maybe I'll start sharing, that actually took me out and didn't allow me to actually perform at the capacity that it looked shiny from the outside. Oh, Taylor's working again. He's there.
You make such a good point there.
Literally. And it wasn't until, I know, I think we've got to just start sharing the real stuff on Instagram, the stories.
It's so scary though. It's funny. We're on stage every night being vulnerable, but no one wants to share that stuff on social. Some people do, and I take my hat off to them. Yeah. It's all glossy, isn't it? So it's good.
And then it wasn't until a dear friend, best friend of mine, introduced me to yoga, and I was like, oh, here we go. Like, come into I'll just do a nice stretch and I'll be fine. Yeah. And what's the next thing? I need a HIIT workout. I want to do a 2-hour dance. Anyway. That's where I was at. Yeah. And then I did this class and I was like, wait, what is this? It allowed me to get out of my mind and into my body. I was like, that was an hour. It felt like 5 minutes to me. Anyway, what I'm saying is that when I started to explore yoga, but it may be different things for everyone. Yeah. Go on AFL. Whatever it is for you to actually like step outside of the performing world.
That's not the most calming experience.
Maybe not AFL.
Go for a run. I like running.
There you go. But what I'm basically saying is that I ended up realizing that I needed to stop and I needed to really make my self-care and my mindset a priority. And the amazing thing that happened is as soon as I started to do that, I kept booking shows, but not only book shows, I was able to sustain them and have less shows off. Nothing wrong with going off. Absolutely not.
No.
Just put that out there. But we build and we train so hard to get there. Isn't it going to be so much better to actually live there completely and be super open and ready to take on the 8 shows and sustain it for longevity? And so that's obviously why we're here today and we're sharing these things and how important it is, because I think we can do it. We can do this industry, and I see a lot of artists do this industry burnt out and the hustle culture and putting all of your eggs in one basket and just going, but it's just not sustainable.
Yeah, and I think that's what you want to be. You want to be able to have a sustainable career, because no one wants to hear that dreaded word, you've got a career-ending injury or you've got and you just go, oh, I wish I looked after myself more. Like I wish I did. And you do hear people say things like that in a lot of industries, not just this one, but ones that require you emotionally and physically.
Do you think that, because I'm almost really wanting to just change this stigma around self-care, because I feel I have this like thought coming in that I feel like a lot of artists think that there has to be something wrong, like to go into self-care. Oh, I need to do it because my mind said, or stuff like that. It can actually see it as something that's quite neutral and supportive. Like whenever I'm teaching or even in myself, it's actually getting a reality check of what do I want and make it something that's actually more empowering. Spend time journaling to actually write out what you want. I remember this amazing quote from this guy that said, the number one reason why people don't achieve what they want is because they don't write it down, what they want, or they don't actually specifically know. They're just like, oh yeah, a bit of this and that would be cool if that, and maybe this. It's if you're not actually specifically clear on what you want, you're not actually going to move forward. But do you agree? Like just trying to
Yeah,
move
definitely.
the
It's a classic one too, like the stigma around going to see a psychologist. Exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks that you have to have something wrong
Yeah.
to go and see someone and start to talk about maybe how you're feeling. Sometimes you
And I
don't
think-
have to have something wrong.
No.
It's just a healthy thing to do.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree. This self-care thing. And self-care looks so different for everyone. Self-care for you looks so different than self-care for me. So also try not to be clouded by what someone else's self-care looks like, because for you it's going to a yoga class. For me, it can sometimes be as simple as going and having dinner at my sister's house.
Yeah.
And then I walk home, I go home feeling so much better. But it's the first thing that we sacrifice.
Yeah.
Always the first thing that we sacrifice.
Yeah.
I've even been like that in terms of self-care with like my body physically. Like I'm a pretty active person in terms of like I used to go to the gym like 6 times a week. And once we started the show, I couldn't do that. Like that was not, that didn't work for me.
Yeah.
And at first I was like, I still need to be doing that. But then when I was able to step back and go, that's actually not looking after myself. That's not self-care. That is actually self-sabotage. And that's how I'm going to end up really burnt out and really, probably injured, to be honest. So sometimes self-care is actually going, that's not working for me right now.
Yeah.
And adjusting it. I know like you're really big on journaling as well. I need to get better at it. But I did find my journal. I got back to Melbourne.
Yeah.
And I found a journal that my friend gifted me when I booked Sunset, and I'd written in it for the first week of rehearsals. And I kicked myself that I didn't continue that. But it was really interesting to read back on how I was feeling and like the nerves.
I know.
It was crazy, but it's so cool to have that as well. Yeah, that was almost self-care, sitting down and reading that and going, wow,
Reflection.
look how much I've grown in the last 7 months. It was cool.
I feel like we could just talk for hours and hours and hours. And I honestly just love meeting you. And that's a really cool privilege as well, that to be in musical theatre, you do get to meet just a random bunch of people for that short period of time or long period of time. And then all of a sudden you don't see them again. So it's just been really awesome connecting. But is there any last bit of advice that you would give the listeners listening in who are students looking to get into the industry, or even emerging artists that they're in their first shows?
Yeah.
And what would be Charlotte Page's final advice?
My advice would be, you can make a career out of this, and I wish I knew that earlier. I did the thing, I went off, I got a degree that would allow me to have a stable 9-to-5 job. So if you are like me and you are not fresh out of school, maybe you're 23, 24 like I was, you're working a 9-to-5 and you have this other thing that you love and you're always sitting there wondering, like my biggest things, this is going Mel Robbins.
Yes.
But take a risk, have a crack. If I didn't imagine, like I always think back, I'm like, imagine if I didn't accept my offer because I thought that I had to buy a house in that next 12 months. Or imagine if I didn't accept that offer because all my friends back home were settling down, having babies and getting married, and I went, I should do that instead of actually following my heart and taking the risk. So just have a crack. There is nothing. You have nothing to lose in seeing how it goes. And if it doesn't work out for you, or you decide it's not for you, then you gave it a crack. That was my biggest thing, the fear of regret, the fear of not making that choice. And I think for me at the time, it felt very now or never. And I'm so glad that there was something inside me that was like, I think you should audition for this school and I think you should see where this takes you. So if you're umming and ahhing, I think my advice would be more for people who were like me and have always performed, but you're just not quite sure. You're not too old, firstly. Can I just say that? I thought I was too old and I was 23.
There you go.
I was like, everyone's going to be younger, and it's not. There's lots of ages. Yeah. Take the risk. Have a crack. You can always go back to a 9-to-5 job. There is always something else that you can do. But we're only in our 20s once, and I think it's the best time to start. That's my advice.
I love it. Thank you so much for being on. How can people find you on the social media? I'll put your...
Oh, gosh, I'm trying to think.
Charlotte Page.
I think I'm _ Charlotte Page on Instagram.
I'll add it into the show notes if you want to watch Shasha's journey. And you'll probably be seeing lots of Charlotte on my socials. We're always together.
We got Singapore to go.
Singapore, that's it. So it's going to Singapore February, which is really cool. So I can't wait to go and explore there because I've never been there.
Yeah.
And you've never been?
I've been once for 3 days, but I'm really excited to live there for a few weeks. It'll be great.
Great.
Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome.